A 19-year-old farm girl had helped France win important battles in a long war called the 100 Years' War. Now she sat locked in chains, attached to a heavy wooden block inside an English castle, watched by the same soldiers whose army she had beaten. This woman had helped make a man the king of France, but now other men wanted to destroy her by proving she was not sent by God, but was a bad person who deserved to die by fire. On May 23, 1430, soldiers from Burgundy captured Joan of Arc at a place called Confined, and they now held the most important prisoner in all of France. In November, the English paid 10,000 francs to the Burgundian soldiers who had captured her, and moved her to Rouen, the main city where the English controlled France. By December, Joan was locked up in the castle of Bouvruil, a strong fortress controlled by the Earl of Warwick. The English had bought a way to destroy the power and reputation of King Charles VII himself. On January 3, 1431, an official order accused Joan of crimes against the church. She would be put on trial by a church court led by Pierre Cauchon, the Bishop of Beauvais, who had worked for a long time as an advisor to the English government in France. The charges against her included wearing men's clothes, which went against religious law, saying she heard voices from God, and refusing to obey church leaders. The trial would decide if Joan's victories in battle had been acts of God's will or the work of a heretic guided by devils. The official questioning began on February 21, 1431. Joan was brought into the castle chapel to face Bishop Cauchon and 42 church leaders who had gathered to judge her. She agreed to make a promise to answer questions honestly, but she refused to tell anything that might hurt King Charles VII. Between February 21st and March 24th, Joan went through almost a dozen questioning sessions. The church leaders pressed her again and again on three main issues: the voices she said she heard, her refusal to obey church authority, and her wearing men's clothes. The church leaders tried to trick her with questions designed to make her look guilty no matter how she answered. When they asked if she believed she was in God's grace, Joan understood the trap. Church teaching said that no person could know for certain if they had God's grace. If she said yes, she would go against church teaching. If she said no, she would be admitting her voices could not be from God. Joan answered that if she was not in God's grace, she prayed God would put her there, and if she was, she prayed God would keep her there. Even the people questioning her could find nothing wrong with that answer. The first 70 charges against her were cut down to 12 main accusations. Joan defended herself so smartly that some church leaders began questioning if the trial was fair. One member of the court quit, saying the testimony was being forced to trap Joan instead of finding the truth. Another person challenged Cauchon's right to be the judge and was immediately thrown in prison. Throughout the trial, Joan stayed imprisoned in conditions that broke every rule of church law. Church law said that women prisoners accused of heresy must be guarded by women, usually nuns, in church prisons. Joan was held in a regular military fortress under the direct control of English military leaders, guarded by common English soldiers who saw her as an enemy. Joan was chained to a heavy wooden block even when she was locked in her cell. Sometimes, iron shackles were placed on her feet. Guards were ordered to stay inside her cell at all times. According to witness testimony from a later trial to clear her name, 3 guards were stationed inside her cell all the time, with 2 more posted outside. Joan had no privacy and no rest from the constant watch of men who hated her. The guards treated her badly and abused her all the time. Many witnesses later said that the soldiers made fun of her constantly and that she lived in constant fear. When she got very sick with a fever and thought she might die, she begged to receive the sacrament and to be buried on holy ground. Her requests were denied. The Earl of Warwick stopped the guard from going too far, not because he cared about her, but because the English had paid the price of 1,000 horses for her and wanted to get full political value from her condemnation. But the danger Joan faced went beyond just being treated badly. According to testimony given at the trial to clear her name in 1456, Joan faced repeated physical threats and attacks during her time in prison. One witness said that an important English lord tried to assault her. This explains why Joan kept insisting on wearing men's clothes, even though it added to the charges against her. Men's clothing, tightly tied and laced, gave her protection that a woman's dress could not. Joan argued many times that it was more proper to dress as a man when surrounded by male guards than to wear women's clothing that left her unprotected. The judges dismissed this reasoning, but the danger was real. The trial itself had many things wrong with it. Joan was questioned for weeks before being officially told the charges against her. She was not given any legal help. The procedures fell below even the lowest standards for church trials. The trial took place in Rouen instead of in Joan's home diocese, which was against church law. Evidence suggests the trial records were changed at important points to make Joan's statements look more guilty than they actually were. On May 23, 1431, Joan was brought before the court and told that religious scholars from the University of Paris had reviewed her case. Their verdict was clear. Her claims to hear voices from God were judged to be the work of devils. Her wearing of men's clothes was declared unnatural and wicked. Her refusal to obey church authority made her a heretic. If she would not take back what she said, she would be handed over to government authorities for execution by burning. The next day, Joan was taken to the cemetery of Saint-Ouen and placed beside a wooden stake. The sight terrified her. Facing immediate death, weakened by months in prison, abandoned by the king she had crowned, Joan broke down. She agreed to sign a form taking back her claims and admitting she had lied to the people of France. Her sentence was changed to life in prison. She was ordered to wear a woman's dress. She obeyed, but Joan's take-back lasted only a few days. When Cauchon and other judges visited her cell shortly after, they found her once again dressed in men's clothes. Joan stated that she had changed back by her own choice, saying the voices of Saint Catherine and Saint Margaret had scolded her for denying the truth to save her life. But witnesses of the 1456 trial to clear her name gave a different story. They testified that guards had deliberately stolen Joan's dress during the night and left her nothing to wear except the men's clothing, forcing her to put it on. Whatever exactly happened, the result was already decided. On May 28th, Bishop Cauchon and 7 other judges questioned Joan in her cell. She told them she had gone back to wearing men's clothing because it was necessary for protection while imprisoned among men, and that her voices had scolded her for taking back what she said. Joan's return to male clothing after promising not to wear it was proof she had gone back to her old ways. Under church law, a heretic who went back to their old ways could not be given a second chance. On May 29th, the judges all agreed she must be handed over to government authorities. The sentence was death by burning. On the morning of May 30th, 1431, Joan was allowed to receive the sacraments, an act of mercy that technically went against church law. She was then led from her cell to the Old Market Square, the old marketplace in the heart of Rouen, where a large crowd had gathered. A tall plastered pillar had been built in the center of the square, and Joan was tied to it. She should have been formally handed over to the bailiff of Rouen for government sentencing, but instead the English took direct control. Joan asked to see a cross as she died. An English soldier, moved by her request, made a simple cross from 2 sticks and gave it to her. She kissed it and held it against her chest. Then a large crucifix was brought from the church of Saint Sauveur. Joan embraced it before her hands were tied, and it was held before her eyes as the flames were lit. As the flames rose around her, witnesses heard Joan crying out repeatedly. Her final word, shouted above the roar of the flames, was the name of Jesus. At 19 years of age, the farm girl who had changed the course of a war died in the marketplace of Rouen. After her death, the executioners burned her remains 2 more times to make sure nothing was left. Her ashes were thrown into the Seine River to prevent anyone from collecting relics. The English believed they had erased Joan of Arc from history. Instead, they had created a martyr whose story would last for centuries. 25 years later, a trial to clear her name was held at the request of Joan's mother. The court heard testimony from 115 witnesses. The judges declared that the 1431 verdict was invalid, unfair, and full of mistakes in procedure. In 1920, the Catholic Church made her a saint, Saint Joan of Arc. The woman burned as a heretic became a patron saint of France. If you found this story powerful, make sure to like and subscribe for more incredible stories from history. If you had been there in that Rouen marketplace on May 30th, 1431, watching as a 19-year-old girl called out to God while flames rose around her, would you have recognized the execution as murder disguised as religious justice? The trial that condemned Joan was never really about heresy. It was about destroying the symbol that had made French victory possible and English control impossible. Let us know in the comments what you think about Joan of Arc's story, and check out our next video to learn more amazing history.